I call your attention. We will officially open the July meeting of Council. Welcome to you all, staff and gallery members. Gallery present, I should say. We're all present, so there's no apologies. Minutes of the previous meeting for confirmation. The council meeting held on the 16th of June 2020 and the special meeting held on the Monday the 29th of June 2020 at 9 AM. Moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor DeBreeze. All those in favour? Carried. The next item will be the Mayor's report, which has been attached.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just should have picked up there that, and the minutes will reflect this. Tuesday the 16th was 9 AM and the special meeting was actually 6:30 PM.
Okay. Thanks for that. We'll just tidy that up in the minutes. The Mayor's report on page 5. When I wrote the Mayor's report, I was back before we've seen the overwhelming success of the Barossa Adventure Station. So I'd just like to extend to the council for the vision for this space and how it's activated. It's far beyond my thoughts that we would ever see something as grand as what has been delivered. So all compliments to all the staff involved, particularly the Director Jo Thomas and her team, but everybody else involved in the coming together of that space and activating it to the degree that it is the regional facility we was hoping it would achieve. And in the early stages, you know, there's a few little things. It's been ground proofed now by many children hitting the activities and well received by the general public. So there's, as I said, there's a little bit of fine tuning, but a really great outcome for the investment that this council has put into that particular facility. Any other questions, Councillor Miller?
Thanks, Mayor.
I'll just.
Am I working?
Yep.
Just in your report, you on the 3rd of July, you had a very busy day, I noticed. And one of the comments you made there, I'm seeking further feedback as to how we can progress this project. You're referring to the Culture Hub. And what are you aiming to do there, and have you had any feedback at this stage from anybody that you've spoken to?
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. Thanks, Councillor. Yeah, look, there was a comment made by our local member for Barker, which I'm still trying to drill down even deeper. It was a comment that sort of inferred that there's been a bit of a lack of cooperation to Council's decision to progress the Culture Hub to the extent that we believe this is going to bring to our region. And I guess there's not a true understanding of the scope of what this means and can achieve. Bit of a perception out there in the community that it's all just about arts and things like that, but it's much broader than that. So I've asked the question of the local member just to give us a little bit more indication of why it was actually recommended twice for funding and why it just hasn't got over the line. I've also been in touch with Minister Birmingham's office as well as the regional federal member as well, just to see, because from the feedback that staff have got and the CEO and as has been previously reported, is that there's not much more we can do. It just appears that there's a political roadblock there. So, and I think the endeavour is that, you know, we've got to be, as a council, united in moving forward this project because of the wider benefits that this is going to bring to our region. And we've already seen, and there's a report coming up later on about the music coordinator, how an event attracted 9,000 people into the region. So, and we're talking about culture and music and all of the broader things that it's going to bring, and we just cannot. You know, it's a little bit of talking about a regional facility in Anguston, but this is a regional facility, the spoken hub concept, which will bring a lot of people that have got hidden talents within our community and bringing all that together. So I just encourage everyone to not lose sight of the vision, and I'm led to believe from the advice that I've been given is that there's another round in October that may be called for, so we need to position ourselves to push forward, and hopefully we can bring this facility and all the potential that it's going to bring to our region to fruition. I think Councillor Wee-Smith, you had your hand, and then Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, Matt, just a question on one of your meetings on the 8th of July with Adelaide Hills Council regarding their boundary proposal. Could you please update us on how that's going to impact the Barossa Council?
Yeah, look, thanks. Yeah, it was a meeting. The Adelaide Hills Council had decided to just contact the adjoining mayors and just see what we was doing, or the adjoining councils were all doing, and what state of play was in respect to that. Not a great deal come out of it. It gave us it was a good opportunity to talk about GM and other sorts of issues that we're all dealing with across the state and even our local region. We just explained our position, that we've put it on hold at this particular time, and at that point we hadn't had any advice on the lights proposal, which is now being circulated. So it was really just a chat and explain where we were at. They weren't looking at encroaching in our area, and we expanded that we weren't looking encroaching into their area. So, but it was a good opportunity to have a chat. I don't think there's anything more that come out of that. So, no, thank you. Councillor De Vries.
Yeah, excuse me, Your Worship. Yeah, just I guess in part because the gallery, I just thought putting in context the culture hub. I mean, it's not just a passive type thing where we're looking at art on the wall. There's also things like the addition of a radio potential for television broadcast coming out of the area, and also, of course, historic archives and so forth, which is really important to our heritage and our culture and our lifestyle. But just to put it in context, how much money are we missing out on with these grants? I mean, just so people get a sense of, you know, the scale of the disappointment, I guess, when we get knocked back.
I'll throw to the CEO.
3 years to me, the one culture and arts program is less than 1/8 of the whole big project. The grant application we applied for was 44%, but it wasn't just about culture, it was actually about community accommodation as well. The application, I think, for me was 4.7 million. Yeah.
So that's the scale that we're chasing now, 4.7 million.
For that particular project.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're chasing 10 million for all the other sports work and other things too. But you've got to remember that the culture hub is no different to the rec and sport, no different to about tourism and economic development as well.
Councillor Johnston and then Councillor Wee-Smith.
On a completely different track, am I right in thinking that, and this will concern the person and the family involved, that it's not McCullum but McLaughlin? Is it Hugh McLaughlin that you met with? Thank you. I meant to ring Barossa and say we need to change that, but I'm sorry to do that.
No, that's all right. I also thought I was meeting with McCullum, but I was promptly told, no, you've got to talk to Dad. Councillor Wee-Smith.
Just to follow on from Councillor De Vries' question, it's probably more a question for the CEO. In terms of costs, how much have we actually spent with these multiple applications we've put through for this project, in terms of resources, etc.?
I don't have that figure off the top of my head, but we spend it on all the resources, but I can certainly get you a figure, yeah. Do you want it for all of them though? Because it's not just the culture hub.
For this project, because it's obviously been put forward several times now for funding, and obviously a fair bit of time that has been put into putting this forward, so.
Absolutely, as for example, so is Mount Pleasant, where we put 3 applications up to get the last one up.
Councillor Schilling.
Not working. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was working.
Just a question on the culture hub, because we're not able to get these big chunks of grant. Is it possible that the grant or the project could be broken up into stages that would make grant funding a bit more accessible?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. If we're going to explore the changes to the priorities of the next target big project, I think we need to put it in a workshop. Because at the end of the day, you've already made resolutions. What we're doing is following your resolutions. And I think having a debate around minor detail, because we're pursuing big and small projects, not just for creative industries. We're trying to grow tourism. We're trying to get $60 million for a regional bike path across 6 different communities. So you're having a conversation in isolation, but it's the whole that actually makes the benefit. It's not just about creative industries, it's also about sport and recreation, it's about other tourism outcomes, it's the whole package. So if you're going to start reprioritising, I think the whole idea is to bring something back and have a conversation. I guess another good example of that is the report in there today around Stockwell matter.
Councillor DeVries and then Councillor Havey.
I don't think the issue is one of reprioritisation. I mean, what we've demonstrated is that we've got a very good application, so good that when it gets to the bureaucrats, they've given it the absolute tick twice. And it basically said there is nothing more you can do to make this better. This is effectively a perfect submission. The question then becomes, well then what is the roadblock? Why is it that we're getting through what you think would be the hard part, the bureaucratic hurdle, and then when it gets to the political level, we're missing out? And I guess that's the question we need to pursue, isn't it?
That's right. Councillor Havey.
Just going back to the money side of things, I read the email that Mr. Patton put out just recently in relation to the grants that we've given to Barker. If you have a read of them, you'll find that the total number of grants, the money I'm talking about, does not even tally near 4.6 billion for the hub. I think there's a lack of money there. So if you look at that and think, places up north got money for golf courses and here and there for other transport. It's just not anywhere near the 4.6 billion. So that says to me that just at this time, I don't think there's the money there because of COVID and what the governments have got spent. I think we need to be looking at that as well.
CEO, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Havey. The evidence actually proves the complete opposite, because there were 7 significant cultural museum-based activities which have already provided the data. Some of those over $80 million. I would argue that perhaps there's an issue in terms of getting large funds into whether it's private industry or council in this particular electorate.
That's exactly what I was just trying to point out.
Because the funds are there.
Yeah, the funds are there, and I think I'm allowed to quote the member for Barker, it's the Barossa's turn, but we've only been getting breadcrumbs at the moment.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, BBRF, not one application came into the Barossa.
That's right, yeah, out of the big, yeah, that's right.
And that's also being pursued for an
Yep. Councillor Boothby.
I've missed a couple of workshops where this has come up more recently, but I think you know, one of the things I think we need to do is go back, not to the drawing board in terms of, we know we've got a great project, we've got a great application. What we don't have at the moment is consensus agreement, and we don't have it around this chamber. So to me, that is a problem for us in terms of being able to actually have other people believe that we believe this is a great idea. So I think that, you know, I'd love to, you know, have a chat to Ms. Thomas offline in terms of, again, going back and pulling out some of the key points from the business case about why we're even having this conversation. So we're having this conversation because it's about arts, culture, heritage. It's about preserving what we have, building what we have, celebrating what we have. It's also about creating jobs. It's also about having a huge number of social outcomes that come from this whole entire body of work. And I think we've lost that focus. You know, in terms of what this council has spent on arts and culture in the last 20 years, let's add that up. You know, it's about actually investing in a sector that doesn't get much investment. You know, we're seeing amazing stuff in the community, you know, community-led initiatives. That's great, but I think that we have a role in driving that. And if we don't have consensus around this room that arts and culture and heritage is important, then I think we have that. That's our first problem. So I think it is worth, you know, having, you know, a workshop discussion on that soon, because we have to have a united, positive front and believe what we're saying. Otherwise, you know, no one else is going to believe us. I think that's the base problem.
Thank you. Yeah, look, I just encourage you. Don't lose the vision, because it's a great venture. Someone like to move Councillor Millen, a seconded Councillor. Did you have a comment, or you moving?
I was just moving.
Okay. Councillor DeVries, seconded. All those in favour of the Mayor's report we received? Thank you.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's going on there?
Next item, 5.1, any items for exclusion from the consensus agenda? No?
Hang on.
Someone like to... Oh, sorry. Councillor Louise-Smith?
Just the first item, please, 4.1.1.1.
Yep. Okay, someone like to move move Councillor Johnson, seconded Councillor Hearn. All those in favour for the consensus, just carried. Councillor Louise-Smith.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to withdraw this item. I think it's worthy of a quick comment. I don't want to elaborate on this any further than necessary, but it's obviously been quite topical for some time now. It's been quite distracting amongst the community, and I just wanted to commend the Boundaries Commission on their very wise decision with this proposal.
I was looking forward to getting a third floor.
Thank you. Thank you. Would someone like to receive move Councillor Louise-Smith and Councillor DeVries? All those in favour? Carried. I did chat to the Light Regional Mayor, and he indicated he thought it was a pretty bold move on their part. Councillors, the next item is 7.2.1.1, the COVID-19 service level update on page 62. Page 62.
Make a recommendation, Wish.
Moved Councillor DeVries, seconded Councillor Louise-Smith. Any questions? CEO for a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The reality is, probably as of this afternoon when BCMT meets again, the vast majority of services will be back to normal. So I'm proposing not to continue to bring this report back every month unless there's substantial changes to the service levels again. Unless anybody objects, just saves me another hour of my month.
Do you need that to be included in the...
I don't think so. Because really it's just whether there's any major changes. I can't imagine any major changes. Unless we get another wave, we'll get to right.
Okay, we have a mover and seconder. All those in favour? Carried. Next item is the Legatus annual business plan and budget, 7.2.1.2 on page 70. This is to consider the response from the Legatus and approve or not approve the annual business plan. There was a lengthy debate at the last meeting about this, and I encourage you to support the recommendation because it's sort of holding up moving forward at this particular time, but note part 2 of it seems will continue the discussion. Councillor Johnston? Councillor De Vries, seconded. Any further questions or comment?
I wouldn't mind making a comment, but I'll just prefer to.
Which do you like? Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, look, I agree. We need to, obviously, can't be spoilers. We need to let this move forward. But I think we've discussed this before. Legatus, we used to be part of what is now called Legatus, which was what, Mid-North?
Mid-North,
yeah, before. Sorry?
Central,
Central,
that's right,
okay.
Central, yeah.
And then we were also part of the Southern and Hills area. So the Barossa sort of straddles both regions, and I think really it's only because we have other councils that are part of the RDA Barossa region in Legatus that we're a part of it. Legatus is really, I think the main reason we're in there at the moment is because it is one of the only ways that we can access certain types of road funding, and it feels like it's a bureaucratic hoop that we're jumping through rather than really serving any giving us any great benefit other than that. And I think there are better ways that can be achieved. So I think we need to continue investigating this amongst other bodies that we're a part of. Later we're going to be talking about sort of reforms in regards to local government. I've been on the council about 18 years now, and during that time I've seen, I think, more bureaucratic creeping into the way we do things rather than less, and every time this happens is adding additional cost in time and also financially to the council. And I'd like to see that starting to reduce. If that can't be done at a state level, I think we should be trying to do it at a local level. I'm just finding that I don't know that these sort of additional layers of bureaucracy are actually serving us well, and it feels like there's a lot of duplication involved as well. A lot of people say that we're over-governed in Australia, they've got 3 layers of government, but if they knew all of these sort of like sub-layers in between, I think a lot of people would be kind of horrified. So, look, I'm sure that the people involved in Legatus are doing as good a job as they can. The question is more about the structure and whether it's even necessary for us at this stage.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor. I've had some discussions with the LGA about that very point, as well as some other adjoining mayors in respect. And there seems to be look, there is some benefits in a regional group, but the extent of where we're dabbling is very much duplication. I think we've sort of flagged with them, you know, the RDA, a lot of the work that's being supposedly done through Legatus is being done by RDA. Tourism is also being done outside of Legatus, but Legatus is now playing in that space, even to the point where they're calling together the various tourist managers from within our region and calling meetings, and I've asked even our own tourism representative about the benefit of that meeting, and it was almost a duplication, saying that in many regards that they do go to Tourism SA and have meetings with there, they all get together there, and then they're being dragged up into the Mid-North and beyond to talk about the same stuff. So we'll keep on asking the questions, and the second part of that recommendation does keep that to the forefront. Unfortunately, at the last meeting, there was some mayors that was prior to the meeting were supportive of where we were going, but I ended up being a lone voice in the end. So, but we'll keep on persevering with that. We've already had a contact from the Southern and Hills president looking to have some discussions with the Barossa Council and see where we fit in, if we fit in that region. But also there's been some preliminary thoughts about a peri-urban type region. So yeah, we'll keep on working on that. Any other questions?
Given we're on several of given that we're on several of these things, including the GRFMAs, would there be value in workshopping at some point down the track our involvement in these external organisations that try to bring us all together?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Councillor. Mayor's asked me to do a bit of a review of the. We did some work 3, 4, 5 years ago around regional structures, so it's on my to-do list.
Councillor Boothby, yes, sorry.
I think in that review, I think one of the things to be conscious of is we are investing $11,000 in this organisation in actual dollars, which given our budget is exceptionally small amount of money. To me, where the resource investment that you may want to have a bigger review of is the Mayor and CEO's time, in terms of the meetings that you go to, conversations that you go to, the support that's required to assist Legatus in its work. And that's where, you know, for what it's worth, you know, having all 15 mayors sitting around a table is not good governance, never ever has been. So absolutely it's time for a review in terms of how the organisation functions from a governance point of view. But for $11,000, from my point of view, I think we get $11,000 plus worth out of Legatus. To me, that's not the issue. The issue is actually about what the organisation is there for and what the involvement is like for us, because that's where the cost is.
Absolutely, and that is the point. Yeah, it's a very insignificant monetary amount, but it's the other side of it. It expands out. I think we've had a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Next item is on the agenda is page 113. This is to do with the statute amendments, the Local Government Review Bill 2020 7.2.1.3. Any questions? Councillor Boothby?
So I have read this in totality, but this is from a conversation I was involved with other organisations. There's one thing I couldn't see in here, but one thing that has been said is talking about the changes to what was informal gatherings of being any conversation, whether it's, I think it was 2 or more councillors together. Is that something a question to the CEO in terms of the CEO's group? Has that come up in that conversation? Because from memory it wasn't clear, but I can't see it in here where it's picked up.
CEO?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Boothby. Yes, it is picked up. There are some rewrites of that component of the legislation to relax this a little bit, and to also relate some of the administrative burden around it, and put in a more practical application in terms of, and they're more about, I think the proper wording is they now call them information sessions or rather than workshops, and remove some of the ridiculous application that 2 people can't get together and have a conversation. Yes, absolutely. And that did come up in the CEO's work as well, but more at the point that we're supportive of the administrative burden of it. While I've got the floor, I just will add that the resolution, second line, at the attachment and at the mayor, right?
Yep.
It just needs the insertion of the word and.
Councillor Johnston.
Just a question around the discussion around the need for an external review of CEO performance. Is it 102B or something, 102A? I just wonder, in most organisations, what they do is have a formal, serious review every 3 years. I wonder whether there could be some thought given to perhaps once every council term or something like that. So it's not an external person every year at considerable expense and fuss that's not really necessary.
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'd actually say I go through a fairly serious review every year, by the way. 22 different people having, yeah. So that was actually also a question with the Minister and the Department when we had the meetings. The clarification point we've been provided is that it's not the requirement for an external review, it's the requirement to have an external person over the site of the review. Very different outcome. So we've been working on a CO performance review committee structure in relation to an ombudsman report a year ago, roughly. Not about me, by the way, about a different council, not about this council, I should say. This may slot into that by having an independent sit on that committee. It's a very different thing than having to engage someone for $10,000 to $15,000 to do a review. So we absolutely asked that question in the CEO group, and that was the clarification we received. So, which actually is a much cheaper, simpler model.
And good government.
Councillor De Vries?
Yeah, I'm happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Wee Smith. Any further comments? Yeah,
question?
I'll let you speak to it then.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Johnson on that whole business of the CEO's review. Yeah, we could bring in someone from outside, but I know that the amount of time that would take to get them up to speed and to have them have a proper understanding of what the CEO is doing, we would end up doing the quickest and easiest thing, which is bring in a consultant. We've done this in the past, and we've actually, for the new councils, we used to bring in consultants to actually do exactly what we do internally. The process was conducted almost identically. The only thing was with a $10,000 price tag each time, Worship, something along in that range.
At least, yeah.
Which is why we stopped doing it, because it was absolutely just a waste of money and time. Look, there's a lot of good things in this, which are sort of trying to, tidy up some of the overreaches and the rules that were in the previous government's remit. I still think there are things here that I would have liked to have seen sort of streamlined a little more. The biggest problem is, for me, is like, clearly this was written by a bunch of bureaucrats, and it's the old thing of if you've got a hammer, if you're a hammer, then everything's a nail. And so that seems to be often the way to approach things, is try to legislate the problems out of the system. But as the ministers mentioned on numerous occasions, they're not really targeting councils like us. They're really targeting a handful of councils that are not behaving as well as they could. But unfortunately, it's very hard to do that without creating a one-size-fits-all approach, and we become collateral damage. I know that's not the intention, but it's the reality. So so long as we can sort of see these, the CEO's comments and the LGA's comments, which are basically about trying to streamline and reduce the amount of bureaucracy that's in the system, I think that's going to go well. I think, if the Minister takes all these thoughts on board, I think we could end up with something pretty good. So with that, hope you support the motion.
Councillor Wee Smith, do you want to say? Councillor Boothby, you had a question.
There's just probably a comment and a question, if that's all right, Mayor. So in terms of, I think, supporting Councillor Teresa's comment, there's a lot of great stuff in this reform, and I think there's areas I'm looking forward to seeing, with all due respect to lawyers making a lot less money at local government. But I guess one of the concerns is around potential unintended consequences. So things like the process that ESCOs will have to go through to actually approve budgets and all that sort of stuff. I guess question to the CEO in terms of conversations that you've had with the Office of Local Government and the CEO's group around, once these reforms are bedded down and they're actually in place, to have some sort of review process in that. To, I guess, not a continual evolution, because legislation, once it's a very formal process to change it, but to make sure that it actually is resulting in what the Minister wants, which is improvements in efficiency and governance for local government.
Yep.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Councillor. The three areas of, I think, of good reforms, but also potential costs, are the behavioural board, or whatever they call it. So that will be paid for by local government. whilst there may be an overall saving, I totally agree to local government. I think in my time we basically dealt with 2 member complaints in my 8 years. So that's probably not going to be a saving to us. The remuneration tribunal setting and independent setting of CEO salaries, that will have to be paid for by local government. How that is distributed, I don't know the answer to that. And absolutely, again, the CEO's group with the department and the minister said, okay, we get what you're trying to do with the SCOSA or whatever the agency is, it's probably pretty obvious it's going to be the SCOSA, is the mechanism of what data they're wanting. We've been assured that we do not need to produce a budget by December, because if we do, that wouldn't be yellow, it would be green, it would be red, because you would need to give me another account. Because, you know, like I said in the report, we only finished financial year. We're only about to adopt this year's budget now. We don't finish financial year to October. I'd actually like the staff to have some leave. We wouldn't be able to do it. We would need to be starting to produce the budget for next year now. Whereas I'd actually like to get budget stuff implemented. But the minister and the department are very clear what they're going to want is more from the long-term financial planning positions. And we can do that through obviously quarter 1 or quarter 2 review. Most of the data I'm sure will be very high level. And I think if you think about SCOSA trying to do that for 78 councils and get it back to us by March, so we can put it in our annual business plans, their capacity is going to be limited as well. So I'm reasonably comfortable around that as your administrator. That, but I guess our submission talks about we just need that somehow enshrined in so you don't get this bracket creep over the next 5-10 years. And then suddenly we do have to do budgets in October. That's fine. When I was in state government, we had to produce in 1 November, but 80,000 employees and so on.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Next item is 163, at page 163, 7.2.1.4, the COVID-19 Recovery Business and Community Grant Program Policy and Rules. So we've sort of briefly, not briefly, but we discussed it at a council workshop as to setting the parameters around the grant program. Councillor Louise-Smith. Moved Councillor Louise-Smith, seconded Councillor Troop, CEO.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can I just draw Council's attention to the updated attachments provided last week? There are a couple of typographical and there's a cross-referencing issue. I guarantee that I thought I did those, but something's happened with my saving. But anyway, what you are looking at is the slightly amended ones. They don't change the policy, they just fix a couple of things.
Councillor Boothby.
So I had read the version in the agenda, so please correct me if that's, it's been corrected in the other version, but focusing on hospitality and tourism, which I get that, but I'm just keen for it to be made potentially more clear that because of retail, arts, there's sectors other than just those two that are significantly impacted. So I guess the concern is that people may read that, see a focus on hospitality and tourism and then just not apply if they are in another sector. So I was just keen to make sure that in the communication it's made very, very clear that it's basically any business that meets the criteria in terms of impact from COVID. And we just are noting that tourism and hospitality are severely impacted, but they're not the only sectors that are.
Mr. McCarty, yep.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thanks, Councillor. We'll certainly make that aware in the advertising and rollout. I'd also give Councillor happy to include in the definition of eligible creative industries, retail sector, if Council's happy to do so.
Mover and second are happy with that? Yep. Any further questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Oh, sorry, yes, sorry. Councillor Louise-Smith, yes, you did.
Just very briefly, we obviously have discussed this at length at a couple of workshops, but I do want to commend the staff on putting these together. We did highlight at the last workshop, this is a first step. We may need to look at providing further assistance down the track, but I think it's a small way that we can try and help our community recover from what we all know is going to be a lengthy return to where we were, return to normal without using.
Thank you, Councillor Wee-Smith. After I put the motion, I was going to say that, but I don't need to say it now. Great. All those in favour? Carry. Thank you. Page 183.
I move that the Mayor be nominated for the position.
Oh, was it this one?
Yes, it is.
I don't need to declare an interest because I've got no interest whatsoever. And after the last Legatus meeting, I don't think anyone would vote for me in any case.
I move that we decline the nomination.
Okay, thank you. Seconded, Councillor Miller. I don't think you want to speak to that one either, do you?
I'm very tempted to go in the other direction, but I'm not disappointed.
Any other questions? Not. All those in favour? Carry. 184. Oh, I do need to declare an interest on this one. It's a material interest, which I've... wrong one? Have I missed one? Oh, crossed out the wrong one. 184. I couldn't moved on too far. The Community Emergency Management Policy, 7.2.1.6.
Move the recommendation.
Moved Councillor Johnston. Seconded Councillor Boothby. Any questions? All those in favour? Carried. Um, 7.2.1.6, the Community Emergency Management Policy, which I'll... Seven. I've got to fix my glasses, I think. What number did you say? Okay, sorry. 191, I'll get there. The Legatus Charter Amendments. This is seeking endorsement of a minor and administrative charter amendments. Moved Councillor De Vries, seconded Councillor Boothby. Any questions? All in favour? Carried. 7.2.1.8, the annual report on the internal review of council, the decisions of decisions 2019 to 2020, 195. Moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor Hearn. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
I need to highlight the expenditure involved in this particular exercise. Well detailed. If others want to go on the website and download and have a look, it's disappointing.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Carried. Now I've got there. 7.21.1.9 on page 293, nominations for the State Bushfire Coordination Committee. I'll declare an interest again. I've got the right one. And leave the chamber. I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor Boothby.
Councillor Havey?
I'd like to move that recommendation.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder?
Yeah.
Councillor De Vries, any questions or comments? Or with a move on, seconder like to speak?
I'd just like to say that I think the Mayor is a good nomination for that position due to his background and experience.
Thank you. Seconder wish to speak?
Yeah.
Any questions or comments? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Thanks, Dave.
Can I move a brief adjournment?
Councillor Johnston's moved a brief adjournment. Could we just have a seconder for that adjournment, please? Councillor Boothby, all those in favour? Brief adjournment. 5 minutes?
Yeah.
All those in favour? Carried. Recommence the meeting following that adjournment. Finance 7.2.2.1 on page 289. This is the uniform presentation of the finance report, provide information as to the financial position of council.
298.
298.
Oh, you had it the wrong way there.
298.
Move the recommendation.
Move Councillor De Vries.
Yeah.
Seconded Councillor Havik. Any questions? Not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Next item is on page 301. This is the public submissions on the draft annual budget and business plan 2020-2021, incorporating the long-term financial plan 2020 and 2021 to 2029-30.
Move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Moved Councillor Vries, seconded Councillor Angus. Do you wish to speak?
Yeah, I just want to acknowledge the civic mindedness of the person who responded. Well done to them for showing an interest in local government and budget.
Councillor Angus.
I'd just like to make sure that we respond to that person in whatever way we seem appropriate. It may be a phone call from the Mayor to thank him for his interest and maybe listen to his grievances, because sometimes that's all people want. But I don't think he should be left hanging. He should be acknowledged.
CEO.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. We have and will always acknowledge each submission that's made, as we did last year and the year before and the year before that. So the person will receive the normal correspondence once you guys have made a decision.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All those in favour? Carried. Next item is 7.3.1.1 on page 304. This is the fees and charges to approve the recommended fees for the hiring of the Williamstown Soldiers Memorial Hall and the Tanunda Recreational Show Hall. Moved Councillor Johnston, seconded Councillor De Vries. Wish to speak to it?
Oh, only that I'm looking forward to a time when people can use the halls.
Any further questions? All those, CEO?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. People can use the halls now, just so long as they follow the code.
All those in favour? Next item is on page 307. The Stockwell Recreational Master Plan Project Prioritisation at 7.3.1.2. This is for Council to consider a request from the Stockwell Facility Advisory Group to place the proposed second oval for the Stockwell Recreational Park as the highest priority in the Stockwell Recreational Park Master Plan future project consideration. Councillor Haydock.
I'd like to move that.
Thank you.
Right.
And seconded Councillor Wee Smith. Do you like to speak to that, Councillor Haydock?
Yes. Just to say that this has been hanging around for some time, and I know that the reports that are coming from various groups out there at Stockwell and so forth, that the oval is very, very important due to the number of young people playing cricket, and even now they've got female cricket sides out there, and we need to look at sporting facilities now for the people playing sport now, the younger people growing up, and the generations to come. And this is a big area for cricket and other sporting issues. So it was talked about some time ago that it wasn't placed where it should have been on the agenda for the big project. And so I can't see how we can look back to support it.
A seconder wish to speak? Councillor Wee Smith.
Yes, I agree with all of Councillor Hayvick's comments there. Stockwell's growth area, as we all know, it's growing quite rapidly. This has been on the cards for a while. I know there's been quite a bit of to and fro between the Recreation Park Committee and Council. It's been a huge topic of conversation amongst the community, not just Stockwell, but the broader Barossa community. So I think it's really important that we listen to what that local community has to say, what they believe the priorities to be. And I think it's also important that we do just emphasise point 3, which is that this is contingent on us receiving the grant funding to do this project.
Thank you. And further report from memory coming back on the costings. Councillor Shelley.
I'm not working. Yes, I've been sitting on this committee since I've joined council, and we had a meeting last week, and some of the comments that came from the varying sporting groups last week was that hockey, if there was a second oval, hockey would be able to attract some major tournaments, which they can't do without that second oval, and cricket are actually looking at using Riverton, who have 2 ovals for their home games for the coming season. So their comment was that there are more teams than they have playing surfaces out there at the moment. So they're not looking for an AFL standard oval, they're looking for a playing surface. So I would like all the councillors to support this and get some quotes done to have a look at exactly what this cost would be. Thank you.
Councillor De Vries.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, look, the Stockwell facility, they know what their priorities are, and they're telling us they think this needs to be their highest priority, and why would we want to step in their way? So I'm all in favour.
Councillor John.
I might have missed something in reading this. So does this mean we defer something, or is this an entirely new thing that's coming in?
The Director.
Yeah.
Joe. Yeah.
Director start.
Rick Munn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, so with the elevation of the prioritisation of the second oval, the club rooms and changing rooms that were noted as the highest priority would be deferred.
CEO.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, it will require some changes to forecasting, but it still needs to work within the section 48 financial management report. we'll do that work once you guys make a decision.
Yeah, so what it means is that this is a reprioritisation of what happens in Stockport, it doesn't affect any other community.
No.
So it sounds like a worthwhile thing to do if that's what the community wants.
Councillor Troop?
Mr Mayor, does that mean that they know that that is going to happen? Are they very aware that that puts everything off for the facilities? Yep.
Through you, so in all the discussions I've had with them, and most recently with Councillor Schilling at when we were trying to pull together the working group for the open space funding work, which will obviously continue. Yeah, we made that clear.
Any further questions? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried. Next item is 7.3.2.1, the live music action strategy on page 322. This is to review and adopt the draft live music action strategy by the Regional Live Music Coordinator as a core project, a core objective of this position. Councillor Schilling.
The recommendations.
Councillor Schilling, seconded Councillor Troop. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Just that I think it's a great step towards building the spokes of the culture hub, and I think it's great. We should all support it.
Councillor Troop.
I agree. I think that this is probably works along the same line. We need to activate the area and put some work towards it.
Councillor Barrett.
Yeah, just got a question. Maybe I'm being a little bit pedantic, reading too much into it. I see written all over the strategy is draft, and when we talk about the purpose, it talks about review and adopting the draft, and then when we actually get the recommendation, actually talk about the document itself. Can I just seek some clarification between draft and the finalised document?
Who wants that one? Yep, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. The draft is being presented to Council for finalisation. If you approve that, then it will be a finalised document ready for implementation.
So I understand that it's draft up until today, and once it's adopted, it becomes the policy.
Through you, Mr Mayor, which is consistent with the policy documents that previously approved today as well.
Yep.
I can only give you a draft, I can't approve it. So.
Councillor Wee Smith.
Just a quick question. Does this document require community consultation?
Through you, Mayor. At this point, it will just be, it's a strategy. I think once we go to action plan and further documentation, we will consider going out to public consultation or community consultation.
Any further questions?
We've consulted with the sector in its production.
Through you, Mayor. Obviously, the strategy itself was created through consultation with the stakeholders and community through Leah Blackendale. So, and it does say in the strategy in terms of what we will propose to do if we have further resourcing, I suppose, in that area in terms of consultation and action planning.
Any further questions? Councillor Troop.
So more of a comment, just really appreciate also Aboriginal heritage is certainly very much a part of this, and I appreciate that that's very much involved with this whole draft policy, and that's something I think we need to really be looking at seriously in the arts. Even when we're looking at the culture hub, you know, that reoccurring emphasis on our nations, our three nations here. So, thank you.
Any further questions? Do you wish to close the debate at all? All good? All those in favour? Carry. Page 340.
Yeah, I move the recommendation.
7.4.1.1 fees and charges register for the cemeteries fees. Councillor De Vries, seconded Councillor Johnston. Do you wish to speak to it?
No, it's all very sad, but I understand it's necessary too.
Councillor Johnston?
No, I think it's very clear what's.
Councillor Angus?
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to propose an amendment. 50 years is actually not that long. As a parent, you may well live to see your child's grave dug up and reused. So I'm suggesting that we could look at 60 years instead of 50. Any thoughts?
CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, 50 years is consistent with all our lease arrangements. I'm certainly not having a problem with the lease.
I'm happy.
Managing two different outcomes.
60 if you like. I can see the logic in what John's saying.
Well, Mayor, I mean, yeah, we are all living longer, and when I think 50 years was probably instituted 200 years ago, that was quite fair and reasonable. I think it may be time for a review, and if it's not going to upset administratively the apple cart, so to speak, let's have a look at it. But that's my initial feeling.
Look, in my time it was 100 years, but council brought it 99. Sorry, it was close enough to 100, but we did bring it back to 50. But if the mover and seconder, that's
That's fine.
Thank you. That'd be good.
Mover and seconder is both agreed to 60 years. Any further comments?
No.
Yep.
60 years limited to interment children.
Children, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Put the motion. All those in favour? Carry. Next item is on page 342, 7.4.1.2, the funding deed 2020 to 2021 Commonwealth Infrastructure Investment Black Spot Program. Moved Councillor Hearn, seconded Councillor Wee Smith. Wish to speak to the motion, Councillor?
Self-explanatory need.
Councillor Wee Smith.
Only to congratulate all those involved in putting this grant through. This is a really dangerous intersection that's long overdue for these works. So well done to everybody.
Well said. All those in favour? Carry. Next item on page 361, 7.4.1.3, letter of offer, grant agreement, Australian Government grant, local roads and community infrastructure program. Deputy Mayor Boothby, move, and seconded Councillor De Vries. You wish to speak to it? CEO.
Mr. Mayor, the first step here is to actually obviously get this approved. If this is approved, then we'll need to make amendments to the budget because we've already allocated a certain amount of funding to offset the $1.8 million worth of footpath program. So if it's approved, we will have to do some Q1 adjustments, which will have a cash impact, depending how we go with other grants over the next 11 months now of work. I still think we should do it, by the way, but I'm just saying that because of the way we've structured the budget, that will require a change.
Any further comment? Or, yes, Councillor Troop?
Sorry, I just need a quick question for you, Mayor. Just wondering, have we made any progress on the greening of the footpath? That sort of, I don't know, it was a long time ago, I think it was in a workshop, but we were discussing the benefits of greening footpaths. Have we made any progress on that discussion at all?
I mean, greening as in using recycled material.
No. Oh, I mean, I guess that too, but also just using it as a community sort of project that people can actually use the opportunity to green their footpaths, to actually use that time where we're doing footpaths to actually, use it as a veggie patch or something like that. I remember probably it was a year ago now.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, there hasn't been any further work. I think it's referred to perhaps as the verge area, greening of the verge area. There is already a process in place where if someone wants to take out work on a council land, they can apply for a 221 application. And that's how we've dealt with community infrastructure plantings, for example, West one up at Macolta. And I've also dealt with that. Some other matters where people want to plant some trees. So there's a 221 application which gives them under the Local Government Act authority to make alteration to a verge area. But I haven't done any further works in terms of the broader policy in terms of greening our verge, our council verge.
Any further comment? Put the motion. All those in favour? Carry. We'll move on to 7.5.1, the Barossa Assessment Panel appointment of independent members on page 397. Councillor Boothby?
Move the recommendation.
Moved. Seconder? Councillor Johnston, any questions? Councillor Angus?
What about comments?
Comment, that'll do.
I have to say I'm a bit disappointed with this selection. We had a complying nomination from a local person. None of the people that have been selected have any skin in the district, from what I can see. All their details are blacked out in their applications, but from what I can read, no one actually lives in the Barossa. They're all planners or building inspectors. There is not a variety of skills amongst the group, and I think the one person who is local, who doesn't have planning expertise but has other expertise, has been overlooked. I think that's a pity, and that's all I want to say.
Councillor Wee-Smith?
Also a comment which I think follows on from Councillor Angus's comments. I'm sure everyone's aware here of the data that was released by the state government across the past week in regards to planning timelines and the time in which it takes to get these development assessment applications approved. As an elected member, I'm particularly disappointed to see the Barossa Council's performance in that. We have consistently rated as one of the worst councils in the state. Whether that has anything to do with the members on the panel, whether that is to do with information that we're waiting to get from applicants, I think we really need to be focusing on trying to improve these timelines. They're unacceptable as far as I'm concerned.
CEO?
Yep. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. The reality is the council makes the appointment. This is only a recommendation. If you want to change it, this is your time.
Councillor Miller.
Thank you. I do have to state that one of the members that have been nominated, Grant Hewitt, lives in College Street, Tanunda. Just thought you might like to know that.
Yeah, thank you.
And speaking from my own personal experience, being on the panel, I value Rob Beach's input for what it's worth.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments?
Can I speak? So if I speak, that'll finish the
Big
debate.
pardon?
If I speak, that'll finish the debate. Is that correct? If I moved it?
Yeah, you go for it.
So in terms of Councillor West-Smith's comments, I fully support the fact that I think we do need to be really, really conscious of all the parts of the process and you know, work out, you know, and I know the team has done work in terms of actually that, you know, the CEO has had a full review of all of our services, including, you know, the planning services. So there's opportunity presenting with the new planning design code, the new e-portal. We're at the beginning of that process where that stuff won't really come in for us until September. So I think that possibly in a year's time or 6 months' time, we need to be, be setting some targets for ourselves. Once those new systems are bedded down, to actually be actually having a bit of forensic look at what our performance is. Where are the stop gaps, and where can we do better? Because we do want to be seen as a place that it's easy to do business with us. And that we are pro investment and jobs growth, but I think to be fair to the team, there's a fair amount of change going on at the moment, and the time probably isn't right now to be doing that forensic stuff. But once those new changes are actually bedded down, then I would agree with that we need to have a look at that.
Mr. Madro, yep. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yes. We've closed the debate.
I opened it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Through the Mayor, yes, it is only a recommendation, and obviously we took the opportunity to gauge as much expression of interest as possible. The members that have been recommended by the administration are obviously the existing members. We have currently one vacancy due to one of the existing members not seeking to re-nominate. The current terms of reference obviously limit us to having at least some attempt at gender balance. We've only got 2 nominations from female candidates, so you've got 2 to choose from. Obviously, the administration went with someone who we felt would bring some skills to the panel. That's not to say that the other candidate wouldn't either. It's just in terms of what then you wish to have on the panel. I think having a diversity in skill base is appropriate. So again, it's up to you as to who you wish to have that fill that vacancy. In terms of the data, I think it's important to note that yes, we are attempting to improve the systems, and it's also very important to note the data is not accurate that what is being provided to the state government. It's fairly well known that our system is not 100% correct. So when we provide the data through the system indicator reporting, it's not 100% correct. So we are questioning the actual data that has been used in the reporting in the advertiser.
CEO.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I think it is pertinent we have a quick conversation, and we will bring something back, and I've asked the team to provide me some more information, etc. But we have reformed. The development area was the first to be reformed under the change program. The data that has been quoted in the advertiser, we haven't actually been provided. We understand it's from 2018. But it is fair to say that we're obviously re-reviewing where we're at, and we will bring a report to have an informed conversation with you once that's on my desk.
Councillor Johnson, then Councillor Hayvick, and then Councillor Angus.
I feel like somewhat of a conflict about the appointment of Susan Giles as opposed to, let's not name Jamie Evans. The challenge here, just from my brief experience at 1 and 2 meetings being on that assistant panel, is that the council member on the panel brings the local balance to it and the sort of outsider's view. You really need the skilled professionals looking carefully at the applications in front of the panel. So I'm just wonder whether it's appropriate to choose Susan over Jane. I'll leave it there. It's just it really gets quite technical. And so unless you've got some really strong technical expertise around the panel, things could potentially go wrong. So I think we should support the appointment of Susan as much as I would prefer to see Jane there. To the other point, I think we as a council need to hold ourselves accountable for not questioning the fact that we have not had data about the length of time that it's taking for the relevant applications to be approved. We're responsible for not holding the executive to account. That's all I want to say about that. So we've sat there and had several reports that say, this is a mess, we're not reporting it. And we've not questioned that. So we have some skin in this game.
Councillor Hayden.
Just going on from there, I must say that this has been discussed in brief before. Nothing's happened about it now. Going back before the last council election, I spoke to many people, and this is one of their gripes. This is one of their big gripes about the time factor it takes for this council to approve someone putting up a shed, some minor approval such as that. And I think it's about time we got on with it, made some recommendations and changed the process of how we do it. I know a council, a big council, that if you apply to have a shed put up, it's all fixed and done and dusted within 2 days. It's the procedure they use. It can be done. Thank you.
Just to encourage members, we're sort of talking about the appointment of the panel. I take your points, and I think the CEO has indicated there'll be some more information that we can delve down on. Nevertheless, I will say that I was also equally disappointed as the mayor to see how the Barossa Council written up that way too. So I think we need to workshop and work through that at some stage. Councillor Angus?
Well, I'll test the meeting and I'll move an amendment that we nominate Jane Evans in place of Susan Giles.
Councillor Angus has moved an amendment. Someone wish to second the amendment? Councillor Haydick?
I'll second.
Okay. Councillor Louise Smith? Seconded. Councillor Angus, do you wish to speak further?
I will only say that, notwithstanding Councillor Johnston's comments about technicalities, Jane Evans is a reasonably competent person in a variety of fields. We also have a great deal of technical expertise in our staff, and I don't think it's beyond, when I consider that the entire council was once the development assessment panel, and we did ruin the joint. There was some argy-bargy from time to time, but anyway, for what it's worth, I'd urge you to support the motion, the amendment, sorry.
Councillor Louise Smith, you wish to speak?
Yes, so just following on from a couple of other comments, we have actually discussed the performance of this panel during the period of this council. I recall quite clearly, since being elected in 2018, that we have had this conversation a number of times and been assured that, you know, things are being done to improve things, but from what we've been presented so far, I can't see that's the case. The data that we're referring to is from a period, as I understand it, from 2018 to 2020. While there have been some improvements, we're still nowhere near where we should be. As Councillor Haybick said, one of the biggest gripes I hear from ratepayers in the Barossa Council is the time it takes to get anything through our assessment panel. The cost of doing business with our council, the cost of business in terms of time in comparison to some of our neighbouring councils, it's absolutely unacceptable. From personal experience, I have a family member, it took them nearly 3 years to get an application through, and that wasn't for lack of information. So, you know, that's personal experience. I know that the new code seeks to significantly decrease the time it takes to get these applications approved, and I really hope that it is going to help our council. But having said that, I think based on what we've seen so far, it's time to refresh the faces that we have got on our panel, and I think Janie Evans would be a good addition to that.
Any further questions?
Just a comment.
Comment?
In defence of the panel, so few of the applications actually get before the panel because they're either out of order, there's objections raised and so forth. The panel quite regularly reviews them and passes them on. There's no problem. But where we are having difficulty is, and we've asked of the planners themselves, how long? Why is it taking so long? Well, quite often we ask the applicant for information, and we've got to chase it 3 or 4 times to get that information. Now, all of this is not to do with the panel. We are now talking about the members of the panel, and I take umbrage to the fact that you people, or some of you, are blaming the panel when it has nothing to do with the panel. So just keep that in mind, and I believe firmly that the 3 that have been nominated will do a very good job.
Any further questions, Councillor Troop?
I'd actually think that Janie Evans might be a good choice. She has got a rural perspective, she's farming, she's got a farming background, environmental, community minded. I think it adds, and that with the legal, with that legality, like legal side, I think she'd probably be an interesting addition to the mix. Just thought I'd add that.
I'll put the amendment.
Can I close the debate?
Oh, you can close the debate, certainly, Councillor.
Thank you. Simply to say that my motion, amendment and my feelings and my comments are not in any way directed at any delays in the system. I agree with Councillor Miller. We're not talking about the length of time it takes to get an application through. Nothing to do with it. Talking about personalities around the table. So yeah, the time it takes to get something through the system is not in question at this point in time. But I urge you to support the amendment.
Your Worship, as a point of order, isn't the mover of the original motion the one who's supposed to speak finally on the amendment? Effectively getting that right of reply.
No, they'll get the right of reply when it becomes the motion.
Because this is only an amendment, and then we've got to move the motion.
I was always of the opinion that, maybe I'm wrong, but I always thought that when a motion was amended, that the mover of the original motion got to speak before.
One of the times I don't bring my regs in.
My understanding is that
otherwise the mover is the only one who's not allowed to discuss the amendment, and they should be.
Well, I'm sure it's up next.
I want it to be process to be done properly. Maybe I'm wrong.
All we're doing is amending it, then we can go.
I understand what we're doing. I'm just making sure the process is being followed. I may be wrong, but just want to.
Sorry, the website's missing. silent.
Interesting, alright. Because I remember that was the way Mayor Hearn used to apply the rules. But if it's not, it's not breach of etiquette, that's fine.
You can have one further amendment if it's carried.
In the logic in me is, you actually be removing the original motion, gets the right to have a large reply if this becomes the motion.
But at that point, it's too late for their voice to have any influence over the decision making, because how can you have a right to reply once the decision's been made?
The decision hasn't been made. All you do is
So what I'm saying is, under Mayor Hearn, what we used to do was the mover of the original motion was then the last person to speak on an amendment.
Well, I guess at the end of the day, as you say, the solution sits with
And I was under the impression that was the formal meeting procedure, but if that isn't, which it sounds like it isn't, then that's fine.
Yeah, I always thought that the amendment goes, if the amendment gets up, that becomes the motion.
Yes, that's right. Yeah,
that's fine. No, I just wanted to be sure.
All right. The amendment, I'll put the amendment that the Councillor Angus has put forward. All those in favour of the amendment? So the amendment is carried, and that now becomes the motion, as I understand it.
Yes.
And do I need to get a mover and a seconder for that? No, thank you. All those in favour? Oh, the debate, okay. You want a debate? No, all right. Put the motion then. All those in favour? Carried.
Thank you, members.
Page 456, this is to do with item 7.5.2.1, the GM crop moratorium and the communication plan. So this is
recommendation.
moved Councillor Bree, seconded Councillor Johnston. Do you wish to speak to the motion?
No, not really. We've discussed this at length in the past, so I think that, just to clarify, we're talking about GM crops for those in the gallery, and I think it's really important that we get as much community feedback as possible, and that's what this process is all about.
Councillor Johnston, you wish to speak?
Just briefly, I'd like to congratulate the team putting together the survey that made it quite clear about what it's about in the preamble. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? All those in favour? Carried. Page 473. Consideration and adoption of committee resolutions for the Barossa Bush Gardens, 7.5.2.2. Councillor Wee-Smith and seconded Councillor Schilling. Wish to speak? Councillor Schilling? Comments? Questions? All those in favour? Carried. Yep, thank you. Oh,
Slow down.
slow down. Yep.
Are we up to 8.1.1?
Yes, we are. Yes, yes.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I need to declare a material conflict of interest. It's in relation to my performance, contract for employment, and other personal matters. As is the norm, I'll declare the conflict now in public.
Yep.
I'll remain in the chamber to take any questions, and I'll remove myself from the chamber prior to any debate. All staff will remove themselves as well once you pass the resolution.
Okay, now I'll move the go to public.
and seconded Councillor Johnston. We'll go into confidence. Thank you. Just thank you, members. We've just discussed the CEO's performance review, and I might convey to you, Martin, and to staff, council's appreciation of the enormous work that's been undertaken. Not only what has had to happen in the day-to-day activities and all of the things that council's been looking at with the big project, but especially during the pandemic and all of the work that had to be put in place in such a rapid time and progressing it through to reopening and all of those things associated with that. We believe as a council that we have been a standout in local government, and the effort that's been put in by you and the staff for the benefit of not only this council but the broader region has been sincerely appreciated. So thanks to everybody. With that, we have another confidential item. Councillor De Vries, you've moved, we go into confidence, and Councillor Wee-Smith, you've seconded. With that, we'll go into, all those in favour? Carried. Thank you, members. We'll return to the meeting. The next item is urgent adult business, 9.1, and that's a request for a leave of absence from Mayor Lange on the 7th of August 2020 to the 17th of August 2020 inclusive, and I'll declare an interest as a matter dealing with my leave, so I'll hand over to the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So, move Councillor Wee-Smith, second Councillor Hearn. Any comments or questions? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Carried.
Thank you, members. As that's the end of our agenda, I'll close the July meeting. Our next ordinary meeting is on the Tuesday, 18th of August 2020 at 9 a.m.